Joining us now on the Lockdown Leafs podcast, former NHLer, former Maple Leaf, and current TSN hockey analyst and co-host of Overdrive. It's my guy, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill. What's going on, O? Thanks for doing this, pal.
Else, brother, no problem, buddy. Anytime, you know that.
So what's the routine going to look like for you Saturday night ahead of Game 1?
Saturday night, I will be doing yard work during the day, and I will be in the TSN Studio 6 for puck drop. And then it's sign of the cross, pray for not quadruple overtime, because that means you're spending a lot of time in there for a 3 to 4 minute hit, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Are you there the whole playoffs, every Leaf game?
Yeah, I mostly do, Leafs for Sports Center, and there's the panel with Dregs and James and usually Cheryl and a bunch of different other people. And it's work. I mean, it's not like you're just kicking your feet up. You got to,
right.
And the thing that gets crazy is it changes, right? It could be 3-1, one team's power play is the story of the game. And then all of a sudden in the last 3 minutes, there's a miraculous comeback or an unbelievable save or a stupid penalty, an egregious call. Something can totally flip in 3 minutes, and then Duthie's notes are all thrown in the garbage, and you got to start from square one. So they're fun nights because they can just, they can take you on different paths. It's always fun.
Well, especially the playoffs, right? Like you never know what you're going to get. How do you think, things shaped up here in the final week of the season? Toronto now ends up playing Boston instead of Florida. Do you think that benefits the Leafs, or are they worse off? Does it really matter to you? Like now that it's Leafs Bruins as opposed to Leafs Panthers, like where do you lean on that?
I think, Al's brother, it's the same animal, isn't it? I mean, they're both kind of the boogeyman in their own respect, where they play a grinding physical style. And I honestly don't think there's any difference between either two of the teams. This is about what Toronto can do. And Pat Maroon summed it up best. He's like, this is where you see who's got it and who doesn't.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot discussed over the years. I know last year everyone thought this was going to be the group's last chance. I really believe it's the group's last chance. Like, if these guys can't figure out a way to win with separating them and putting them on different lines and having some depth, like, how could you possibly go back again and say, yeah, this is the right group moving forward? I mean, if this doesn't work out, we're talking one playoff series win in 8 years. Sorry, that's not going to fly anymore.
Well, it's going to be interesting that you bring that up. I was thinking about this earlier today and how often, I know we're going to talk about it on your show, but how often you'll end up talking about on OD if it's another first round exit and it's an ugly one from the big boys. You got one guy in particular who's looking to get his bag this summer, talking about Mitch Marner. I mean, how much pressure is going to be on this guy to perform in this playoffs, and how much do you think that's going to influence what happens with him in the summer?
I mean, there's external pressure because the people like you and I are talking about this right now, but he's just got to go out and work his ass off and try to be the best player on the ice. The preseason projections, when we do our top 50 list on TSN, Mitch Marner, I believe, is always ahead of Braden Point. I think for the most part he is. But I'll tell you what, Braden Point come playoff time, they're about the same size, skilled players. Braden Point always gets it done in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's not like he runs people over. He doesn't morph into Eric Lindros. He just does it. He gets to the front of the net. He scores big goals. He makes big plays. He makes big defensive stuff. He's a difference maker, and he's clutch, and he does all the right things at all the right times. That's what Mitch has got to do. It just can't be, it didn't work out for me this year. He's one of the most talented people in the world on the ice. He's a fabulous player. Can really make things happen. He just got to go out there and do it. They all got to do it. It's going to take all of them to do it. And going back to the Maroon comments, they got to get it done.
I completely agree. I mean, we look at the ghost of the past, and it's obvious that the big boys got to get it done. That's clearly a storyline that everyone's going to be tracking throughout the series. What other main storyline do you think you're gonna be tracking? Anything else that catches your eye ahead of the series that you'll be kind of keying in on?
I mean, goaltending, bro, is a massive factor, right? Boston's got two guys that are really good. And I don't even know if anybody knows what they got in their own net right now for the Maple Leafs. It's going to be one of those things where if it goes south goaltending wise, we're going to look at the situation and say, a lot like with a lot of other things we've done in the past, we've looked at it and said, how do you think that was ever going to work? You know what I mean? With like an all-skill team, all 5'10", 5'11" defensemen. We've looked at that stuff in the past and said, how'd you ever think that that was actually going to win? So if this goaltending falls flat on its face, we're going to look afterwards and say, you wanted to go with a guy that was in the minors on waivers and think that he was going to take you to the promised land? I mean, this guy could flip a switch and
Yeah.
be dynamite, but I don't know. It's just difficult. And Brian always talks about it's difficult not to think of. That's no way to think of anything going into a playoff series. You want to be positive, but with past experiences, it's just tough to think of everything panning out and something great happening. I hope it does. I want to keep going into Studio 6 and doing the games and covering it for SportsCenter. But I've been going home after the first round for a long time. I got to the second last year, but it didn't last long.
No, it didn't last long at all. But when you talk about the goaltending, it's interesting because you talk about the up and down season that Samsonov had. Like if I would have told you back in September when I got a text from you saying how the guy couldn't even put his equipment on anymore, he should be ashamed of himself, basically. The fact that he's morphed himself back into this team's number one goaltender, I think is, just a statement to how he's worked himself back into the picture. But that being said, there are those demons from earlier in the season. Like how long of a leash do you think Samsonov has here before they start looking at Joseph Woll?
Seeing his past experiences and play on the ice where it kind of goes south, it goes south. I wouldn't wait very long. If it doesn't look right, it's I'm going to go with Joseph Woll and I'm going to run with Joseph Woll. So I don't know. It's one of those things you just don't even want to be thinking about that. You want to think about quality goaltending performances where after game one, regardless win or lose, you're going to say our goalie gave us a chance to win, as opposed to saying we can't win with that goaltending. So that's all they're looking for after game one. Our goaltender gave us a chance in either our power play. I don't know. Let's just try to dream up a scenario where after game one, we're talking about a victory.
Yeah, would be very nice to have that conversation. I mean, goaltending. The thing is, goaltending hasn't been the downfall for this Maple Leafs team over the course of the last few years in the playoffs. Surprisingly, when you think about the makeshift goaltending tandems that this team has put together over the last 3 years, but it's understandable how it clearly is going to be a massive storyline going into it. One thing that I'm kind of tracking is whether or not those new additions can actually make the difference that we were told they're going to make. You look at Bertuzzi, Max Domi, Ryan Reeves, like these guys were brought in specifically. It was to bring that snot, piss, and vinegar, and they'll be ready to go come playoff time. Like, how much will they factor into this series, you think, when it comes to what they can provide, knowing that this is the style of game that they're supposed to excel in?
They got to be big time players. I mean, it's going to take a village. And if you look at all the things, I did a thing for, the pregame show the other day, the top 5 X factors, complementary players were number 5. The
Yeah.
worst case scenario is you got people that sit back and say, oh, this is Austin Matthews' problem, or this is Mitch Marner's problem. I just got to go out there and see what happens. You got to have everybody invested, whether it's Liljegren, Domi, Bertuzzi, Nyes, Yarncrook. Like, you got to go out there and play and score some big goals. You saw with Vegas and in Florida last year. Like, Vegas's fourth line won them some hockey games.
Yeah.
I think in some of their clinching games, Cassidy said our fourth line won us that hockey game. And you need games like that. Like, if you're going to go the distance and post 16 dubs, you need the coach after the game saying it was our goaltender, it was our power play, it was Eichel, it was the fourth line, it was Yarncroke, it was Matthews. It just can't be the same cast of characters every night. And that goes back to depth. And I think in years past, all we've said is, well, big boys didn't get it done. Well, nobody else did either. So you kind of need everybody going and have that kind of it all come together at the right time.
Well, I guess we'll get you out of here with this one. Oh, I mean, is this the year that they get through the big bad Bruins? Can we get a prediction from you? Leafs Bruins, how many games?
I think it's going to go 7 games and Toronto's going to win.
You got Toronto going through,
Why
exercising
not?
those. How does that happen though? Oh, how are we going to sit there and after 7 games sit there and talk about the Maple Leafs making it through, beating Boston? Like, what do you think that conversation will be like? What did the Maple Leafs do? What can they do to make that happen?
That conversation afterwards is going to be what I just talked about. Contributions from everybody. Their decor was physical. They contained, they put out fires, played well along the boards. Matthews was a stud. Marner, either Marner or Nylander were studs. Tavares contributed. All the things have to go right for them. I mean, for the Leafs, it's like a championship. They're walking onto a championship golf course, and a championship golf course will expose your weaknesses. So if you're not dialed in at all levels, walking into a major, and the Leafs are on the first tee right now, something will expose your weakness will be exposed, whether it's putting, chipping, driving the golf ball, and it doesn't work out. So they need to hit on a lot of these things: goaltending, special teams, star players, complementary guys. It's if one of them is way off, they'll be exposed and it'll cost them. So they're
Yeah.
one of those teams where they're not so deep and so good and so overpowering they can miss on one or two of those things. They've got to be firing on all of them if they want to win.
Well, we'll see. It all starts tomorrow. 8 o'clock puck drop down in the Garden. Leafs Bruins game one should be a fun series. Appreciate the time as always, O-Dog, and can't wait to see how it all unfolds. Thanks for your time.
Okay, house brother. Thanks, buddy.